Hello, welcome to Autistic Chess Openings. We're covering the Sicilian Alapin as white, line number 2. Alright, Sicilian Defense on the board. Let's summarize today's line. We go C3, the Alapin variation. And today we're covering the second most common response, D6. It happens 18% of the time. It is a bad move. They need to be, if they move that D pawn at all, they need to be playing D5 with it. D6 is not a good move because it lets us have the two center pawns, so we play D4. They take, we take. And then they continue playing as if they're playing a normal open Sicilian defense, and you'll see that in the next moves. The most common responses are knight f6, attacking our e-pawn, we defend it, and then they push that g-pawn forward. As soon as you see that, that's a signal for you to move your knight forward, preparing to fortify e5, because we're going to push that pawn in a minute. They go bishop g7. When you see their bishop move your bishop and check them. That is a key move. It's only done 8% of the time, and it's a top engine move, and it's really strong here. We bring that bishop out there checking them. They usually block with their bishop 76% of the time. And now we push e5. They can't take our bishop without losing a piece, so they need to respond to this threat on their knight. The top engine move is for them to take, and then we take back, and then they go knight g4. Attacking it, and now we're about to lose that center pawn, and we can't afford that, and we need to reinforce it, so we go bishop f4. Then they still don't want to take our bishop here because we'll trade queens and mess up their chance to castle, so they castle. And now we push h3, and we make it still very awkward. Not awkward. They'll lose material if they try to trade bishops at this point, so we attack their knight and force it into the corner. And now, when they finally can take our bishop, we liquidate it. We take. All right, they take back with their queen. They can't take back with their knight, or they'll lose material. We castle. And now, their top engine move, one of them anyway, is to trade queens. We take back with one of our rooks. It doesn't matter which one, because it's just going to transpose. We take with the f rook because there's more games in there, so we can see what usually happens. And now they can finally develop their knight. So they go knight to c6. We bring our rook to the 7th rank, attacking b7. The most common move then is to push the pawn. That's not their best move. Their best move is to bring their rook out, but they usually push that pawn when we attack it. And now our killer move is rook c1, preparing a discovered attack on their knight. They challenge our rook with one of theirs. We trade off, and then we move our knight to b5 and attack their, let's see, b5 and attack their a7 pawn and their knight at the same time. They have no good way to defend their knight, and so they bring it forward, and then we take their pawn in the corner, and that's the end of the line. Right from here, we have to play an endgame here, but we have a really good lead, and we know which endgame we need to work on. So let's get into the details now. All right, so the Sicilian Alapin's on the board on both sides. On the left is what's common from leechess.org. I like their website because it's free to browse games, and here's all the games and on their entire website. And here's my custom program that I've written that's it's not pretty, but it's got it where it counts. It shows pre-calculated Stockfish engine scores to a depth of 200 million nodes, which is pretty good, and it lets me explore and map chess. It lets me store these positions and lets me explore and mark things if I want them marked like this. All right, so right here we've got the same position on both sides of the board. What's common is on the left, what's strong is on the right. And now let's take a look at d6. It has a score of plus 53. That's 53 100ths of a pawn, or 53 centipawns, or just I call it 53 points. So we're 53 points ahead if they play d6. And that's their worst move here. They could play knight f6, they could play knight c6, they could play d5, they could play e6. And look at these scores. Our score is with d6 is 53 points ahead. That is, it's not a good move to play d6. So they play d6. Let's catch it up on the left and on the right. So d6. All right, and now in order to cash in on their poor move, we have to play d4 here. So we do d4. And now they got two top engine responses, knight f6 and c takes d4. But you can see only 7% of people are playing knight f6 here because things get very hairy very fast, and they're nervous about that because they're not playing this right, and they're already out of their opening book. As soon as they play d6, we know they're out of their opening book because there's a ton better ways to respond to the Alapin version of the Sicilian Defense that gets them out of book without sacrificing so much engine score. So I highly doubt anyone's playing d6 e6 in response to the Alapin intentionally, and that is part of their book. So we don't need to work on obscurity anymore. We just need to work on, of my 4 criteria, we need to work on the other 3 that I care about. Engine strength, minimizing our branching, and trickiness. So trickiness meaning we want their good moves to look bad and their bad moves to look good, so that it's very likely they mess up. And we can figure that out by seeing what's common on the left and what's powerful on the right. And when they do something commonly that's bad, we know that position is counterintuitive. So C takes D4 is what's common here. So they take, we take. And we can see that's our top engine move is to take back over here. C takes D4. And then right here we can see G6 is another mistake. And they need to push D5. See right here? 55 points if they push D5. So better late than never. And so again, this violates the opening principle of don't move the same piece twice. And whereas my opening principle is different. It's play the best move in any given position. So the best move here is to move that D pawn and challenge our two center pawns here and get some liquidation to happen, so that their position doesn't get worse. So, excuse me, sorry, I've still got that cold I'm getting over. All right, D5 is their top engine move. It's played 1% of the time. People who don't push it at the beginning don't push it later. They don't know to do that against the Alapin. So knight f6 is what's common. 46% of the time, you learn that one move and you got almost half coverage of this position. Knight f6. All right, so knight f6 is how we're going to continue. And now if you take a look over here on the left, you can see that our dominant move is knight c3. Anything else gives a lot of points back. We don't want to give them any refunds, so we go knight c3. All right. G6 or E5 are both the top engine moves here. Now that they've committed to this position, they're now playing it well. So they go G6. That's a good move. And knight F3 is our top move. All right. And just a quick note for those of you who are new, I usually explore anything that's close to the top to make sure that, we get a snapshot in time right here at a depth of 200 million nodes. And then we take a step forward and another snapshot and another snapshot. I have to explore anything that's remotely close just to make sure it's top engine move, because there's other lines that could be there too. So I usually map a whole bunch and then I come back and figure out what's strong. And that's how I can get really awesome things, really awesome lines planned out, even though I'm not a grandmaster, I'm not even close. I'm just a strong club player. So bishop g7 is our top move here. I'm just a strong club player with a really nice tool, because Stockfish is better than all of them. So bishop b5 check, and we're using it differently than they do. We're using it to map lines and explore chess, not to evaluate a position like most people do. All right, bishop b5 check, right there. Take a look at how much better that is than the other moves. All right, bishop b5 check, and then bishop d7, knight at b to d7 is worse. And how do we punish that? We're going to hit them with e5 if they do that, and this will be your final scores here. And they'll have to do d takes e5 there as well, and look at how much better it is if they block with the knight. So blocking with the bishop is what we're preparing for here, bishop d7. All right, let's look at my mapper here. e5 is the dominant move, bishop e2 is second, e5 is definitely dominant. We're going to punish them for letting us have two center pawns. We're going to get one rammed down their throat and fortify it and cut out two pieces from their game, 2 pieces out of the game. All right, so right here, as soon as they block bishop d7 and then we push e5, you might think, well, why can't they trade bishops here? No, if they take our bishop, we take their knight, and now we're attacking 2 pieces at once, and they're going to drop a piece. So they need to, and they need to trade pawns here. D takes e5. What if they go knight g4 without trading pawns? Here's knight g4 without it, and then we push e6. And we got this nasty tactical answer here. And you might think, well, doesn't that just hang a pawn with f takes e6? No, f takes e. It's met with knight g5. Look at that. Look how nasty this turn. Look at this tactical attack here that gets real nasty real quick. All right. And it just it gets hairy from there. You'll have to map that out. So they need to trade pawns once we push our pawn forward. They need to trade pawns first, and then go knight g4. All right. So d takes e5. D takes e5. Knight g4 over here on the side. All right, and now bishop f4 is our only move that keeps our advantage. Everything else leads to just equality. So we have to reinforce that pawn at this point in time. Sorry, they moved their knight. We reinforce that pawn. to keep our advantage here. Bishop f4, we can see the score there. And now they have a number of moves. Let's see here, knight c6 is awful. And what's wrong with it? Well, if you go in there, queen e2 is what's wrong with it. They might take our bishop at this point, then we'll just go queen takes d8, check, and then recover the bishop. Castle. Castling's our line. They castle. That happens 60% of the time. I'm just showing you a glance down these others that happen occasionally, 15%, 10%. They castle. That's the lion's share. And then we hit them with h3. So right here, there's a hidden move for black where they're going to drop their score even worse. It's going to get twice as bad if they don't play the right move. So far, they've been hovering in around 100, a little bit more, a little bit less, 120. So right here it's 100, right here it's 120, then it drops down to 96 as Stockfish sees a little more depth, and I keep looking to the same depth each time, but I'm stepping forward. And at this point it's seeing queen b6. Black needs to play queen b6, and our score is kept around 100 here. Okay, we need to respond queen e2 if they do that, like that. However, queen b6 is only spotted 4% of the time, right there. Out of 476 games, it was only spotted 18 times. When h3 was played against that knight, 59% of the time they retreat that knight. 33% of the time they take the bishop, okay, which loses material. Let's see here. Bishop takes b5 over here. Look how bad it is to queen takes d8. We trade queens. Well, I didn't map it past that point, but it's pretty straightforward. You take queens. They take back, you take the bishop, and now you're threatening to trap the rook in the corner, and you're threatening the knight at the same time. So easy material gain there. If they try trading bishops here, they need to go queen b6, and if they don't see that, they need to go knight h6. So they go knight h6 here. Back this up. We attack their knight with our pawn. They go knight h6. They don't see queen b6. So that doubles our score, them not seeing queen b6, and now we liquidate our bishop. All that time we sat there threatening to, if they took our bishop, we'd threaten them back with worse things, and finally they get an opportunity to do it, and now we liquidate it. And that's why that bishop move was so strong. It had all these tactical things that forced it to be in their face and in their way while we got to set up this dominant center. It's very, very tricky, subtle attacks that Stockfish can find for driving these lines in, and that's often the case. You'll find very narrow paths to victory. When Stockfish gives a score and it seems all high, you have to find the path that leads to that amongst all the branches, and it's a different path for each one. And so mapping it is like memorizing Grandmaster games, except Stockfish is even better than Grandmaster. So you're seeing the closest thing we get to an oracle. We're seeing top-level play on how to punish bad moves by mapping these lines and making them be your main branches. And then, yeah, I'm giving you this main branch, and there's going to be lots of branch-off points your opponent can make, but this line is you're going to go down it time and time again every time you play the Sicilian Defense Alapin variation and they play d6. You're going to respond with d4, and they trade, and then they go knight f6, and then you go knight c3. You're going to see that over and over and over and over again, and it's going to get drilled into your brain, and you'll see these tactics that we're doing on this line will become second nature to you as they get repeated again and again. And then what happens is you'll have these branch off points that they do, and you'll have to go, if I haven't done a video on those ones, you're going to have to go put them in an engine and see what moves are there. And if there's multiple good engine moves, you gotta map deeper and find out which one's optimal and map those. But I'm driving the main lines. I'm driving the trunk. I'm driving the large branches. You'll have to do the small branches and the twigs and the leaves. But this is a huge advantage, having these main lines driven down. It helps give you your spine, your foundation that you're going to build upon for this opening. So we take their bishop, and they have to take back with their queen. If they take back with their knight, take a look over here on the right. 181 points if they take back with their queen. We're ahead 181 points. We're ahead 326 if they take back with their knight. How do we punish that? Queen d2. Queen d2, aiming at the knight in the corner. And the knight's got almost nowhere to go. If they try to move it to f5, we play g4, and the position looks like that. If they play g5, we take g5, and then it gets hairy from there, and it's tactical and it's messy. So, but that's how we respond. If they take with the knight, we go queen d2. So it's a blunder to take with the knight. They need to take with the queen. So they take with the queen, and now we castle. So queen takes, and then we castle. That's our dominant answer. We're keeping our score as high as possible. We're not giving an inch back. We gave him an inch at the beginning when we played the Alapin variation instead of the open Sicilian, which has a slightly less engine score at the beginning by like 10 points, but it ends up completely changing the strategy of the Sicilian defense, and it's very obscure, which gives us a huge advantage because they got to spend all their time as black mapping out how to answer. When they play Sicilian defense, white usually goes knight f3 and then pushes d4, and they get the open Sicilian going, and that's where there's tons of responses that are very, very nasty that they have to prepare for. They're left with very little time to budget to fight against the Alapin variation. And the Alapin variation is all manner of tricky, and it's its own opening. So we're pulling them out into their sideline book, and we're using it as our mainline book. And again, the most dominant factor about getting an advantage in the opening is the difference in size between your book and their book, not the original initial strength of the engine strength of your opening that you're choosing. So Alapin, it's highly recommended. Alapin variation. All right, so let's see, where were we? We got castling by white on this side, and we just did castling by white on this side. Okay, so now it's queen takes d1. Right. Okay, so top engine moves. They could go king h8. That's really weird. Queen takes d1 is the top engine move. So they trade queens. We can take back with either rook. Doesn't matter. It's just going to transpose. And we're going to do with the f rook because there's more games in that, and we're down to only 26 games on this line. We're really mapping this to the end here. And we're trying to connect our opening to our end game. So we take back over here. We can see the scores over here of their top engine moves. Knight c6 is the top engine move here, and that's played 69% of the time. Knight f5 is played 27% of the time, and that's a mistake. We respond to that with knight d5. All right, so knight f5, we're going to ignore that. They go knight c6. They finally get to develop that knight. That's the most common response. They finally develop it. And now we grab that 7th rank with rook d7. We can see that's our dominant move here on the right. So rook d7, attacking the b pawn. They need to challenge our rook at this point. You know, they need to bring the rook over and challenge it, but they don't. They usually protect that pawn there. We can see no one has challenged the rook out of 12 games. It's not a large sample, but out of 12 games, 7 people went b6, so I think we can count on that being a main line here. Maybe even the main line, probably. b6. They push that pawn. They don't want to lose it. And now, resist the temptation to double up your rooks here. That's not the right answer here. Rook to c1 is. That's our dominant move. Knight d5 is also good, but it just transposes into the same thing. I have mapped that pretty deep. You know, you can see knight d5. They go there. We go here. They go. They take there, rook c1. It just transposes. However, it doesn't always transpose. It either transposes or we get a better position. So we're gonna take rook c1 as the way to go and not knight d5 because I'm having a hard time putting this into the words. Depending on their moves, we either end up in the same position or a better one if we do rook c1 first. So we're going to do rook c1 so we can end up have the likelihood of ending up in a better position. So we bring our rook to the 7th rank, right? They push b6, right? Rook c1, right? Okay, that's what we're doing. So we got to the 7th rank, they pushed the pawn, and we went rook c1. We're setting up a discovered attack on their knight when we move our knight, and their knight can't be defended very well once we liquidate rooks, which is their top response here. And if they don't do it, their score starts getting really bad, and so they need to be very careful here. They need to challenge our rook. And when they challenge our rook, they can challenge it with either rook, but there's a worse line if they do the a rook. So we're just going to use the f rook so that we can transpose if they do the a rook if we want to. Just for simplicity's sake, we can liquidate the rook here. It's better if they take back with a knight, but they'll probably take back with a rook. Let's see. So they challenge our rook, we liquidate it, and take a look at these scores here. Knight takes d8 is better than rook takes d8. If we look down there, if they take with the knight, we're going to go knight d5. But they're probably going to take back with a rook. That's a guess, and that's what we're going to guess for this main line. It looks more intuitive to me for most people. Knight, and at that point, we're going to go knight b5. Here's where we diverge from the transposition. If we went knight d5, it would transpose, but we're going to go knight b5. All right, so We liquidate the rook, they take back with the rook, and now we go knight b5. We're attacking that knight. We're also attacking a7, which that knight's defending. And notice the rook cannot defend that knight. If the rook tries to, that knight's pinned, and we just win material. And we end up winning the game there. So they can't defend it. They can't defend it this way either. The pawn's covering it. So the rook can't defend it. The knight has to move. They could try and counterattack, but if they do that, we'll just take their knight, and then they take our knight, and then we take their pawn, and now we got a head start playing Pac-Man, eating up all their pawns and running for the end zone for a touchdown. So that's no good. Yeah, let's see here. Where were we? Knight b5, right. Knight b5 there, and knight b5 here. So if you take a look at their scores here on the side, knight b8 fails, a6 fails to rook takes c6, we just covered that. They can't defend it, rook c8 fails right there to either one of the knights attacking their knight, and look how high our score goes there. It's really bad. They have to move the knight to b4. That's their only move, and that's why I'm mapping this line a little bit deeper. We're going to plan on knight b4, and now we're going to go knight takes a7. That is our dominant move. You see everything else is much lower. So we're seeing big point swings, even this deep, 19 moves in, and there's still huge point swings where you have to play critical moves at critical times. And this is why the opening doesn't matter. It's how the initial score of the opening you pick doesn't matter anywhere nearly as much as the depth of your knowledge in the opening compared to your opponent's depth of knowledge. And that's the advantage of picking something obscure. If you pick something common, like the normal Sicilian, the open Sicilian, you now have to face an opponent who's really booked up, and now you have a lot more work to do to get ahead of them in their book. It's better to pick something obscure, in my opinion. Or I should say, obscurity is a factor that matters, just like engine strength is. I do care about engine strength. I would love to find an opening where the engine strength is really, really high, top, and it's unpopular. That would be great. And that's the best of both worlds. So anyway, knight takes a7. We're going to take that pawn at the very end. So we take that pawn. And that gets us to the end of our line. So before we conclude this video, let's just glance at some potential moves that they might play against us at this point. I marked some of them and looked a little bit deeper. So we took that pawn. They might take our pawn here. Knight takes a2, thinking, material, but it's worse here. They go knight takes a2. We're going to respond with rook c4, and that's why it's worse. If we don't do that, we're going to lose a good chunk of our points here by choosing something inferior. We got to go rook c4, which traps their knight. Their knight can't move anywhere with our rook there. Without their rook coming over and helping, but their rook's babysitting against checkmates in the end, and we're also getting ready to do several attacks with our knight against their pawn here or their pawn here. So rook c4 is what we're going to answer with if they take our pawn in the corner. What if they try rook a8 attacking our knight? Trade rooks, rook c8 check. Trade rooks off and get a head start in dominating this kingside over here. I'm sorry, queenside over here. The kingside is all locked up. Their two pieces are locked behind our wall that we built, and the material all on the right side of the board on the kingside is all equal, but we have the dominant position there, and so we're doing a fight over here on the left, and if we can get the advantage over here on the left, then we have a strictly better position than them, and a much nicer endgame. So you are going to have to learn your endgames with rooks and knights and bishops here. And let's see what else they might do. Knight d3. If they play knight d3, pin that knight to their rook by going rook d1. They also might try knight d5, and your best options there are several. And I haven't mapped these ones because it's hard to tell without looking at what their moves are going to be, which one's better. But bishop g5 looks promising, and so does the same rook d1 pinning that knight. And that's your answers to the 4 things that look intuitive to me here at the end. And that's the end of the line. And I hope you found that useful. Until next time, thank you.